Hi guys, it's me, HD, and welcome to the final Grand Prix weekend of the 2024 Formula One season, as we're only, 2.5 weeks before Christmas, and it is the 2024 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and of course, the season, obviously, literally not over, but in terms of what matters, it is definitely not over, because we still have quite a bit to decide in the Constructors' Championship. Of course, the Constructors' Championship has not been won yet. 21 points separate the top two teams of McLaren and Ferrari, and we will find out this weekend who will become, for the first time in quite a while for either team, the Constructors' Champions of 2024. Of course, other positions in the Constructors to sort out as well in 6th and 7th and possibly 8th place as well. And plenty of hard racing I think we're going to get this weekend for those crucial points and positions. But of course, no points on offer today. It's all about qualifying and setting yourself up for as good of a race as possible. And looking at the field so far, not a massive surprise necessarily in terms of where certain teams are at, but it's looking competitive enough that I think we could get a decent session here today in Abu Dhabi. But hello to all you guys, by the way. I hope you're all doing well ahead of this final qualifying session and final race weekend. And yeah, it's great to be here for the final qualifying watch along of the season. Obviously, the qualifying watch along has been really, in terms of excitement, I think probably the most exciting part of the race weekend. We've had so many great moments in qualifying, so many great battles for pole, surprises. It's really been in qualifying so exciting. And let's hope 2024 goes out with a bang with this qualifying session. But we'll see what goes on. Obviously, today should be a decent session. Maybe not the biggest fight for pole position, but I think, looking at the positions after that, probably from, say, 3rd, going back to maybe 7th, 8th place on the grid, I think we're going to have a close fight through there. But, of course, we'll get on to the data of the weekend so far soon enough in this build-up to qualify. And then, of course, go through the teams individually and how I think they'll get on. Obviously, I'll go through my predictions for the top 10 in qualifying as well. And then, as you can see, in about an hour and 25 minutes, we'll go through the session itself and watch along qualifying. Of course, if you can, watch the session with us. That'd be great, obviously, to enjoy the session with alongside myself. And if you can't, though, watch the session, but you want to keep up to date with what's going on, then make sure to stick around for this stream because I will keep you absolutely up to date with everything going on in qualifying in Abu Dhabi. Now, couple things I want to say quickly before we go any further. Obviously, again, hello to all you guys. Hope you're well, no matter what time zone you're in, part of the world you're from. Hope everything's going well. Hope at least the weather is good in your part of the world at the moment. And the second thing I want to get into, of course, is the weather. Now, here in the UK, the weather is quite bad in terms of the wind. Now, the reason I wasn't able to stream for the Las Vegas Grand Prix was because of the weather being as bad as it was. Luckily, the reason I'm live now is because I woke up this morning and my satellite signal on my TV has been absolutely fine. And hopefully it will continue that way. So, yeah, it should be okay, but I will say, because it is still very windy outside, and if you can hear any background noise, it is probably the wind outside my bedroom window, which is not that far from where I'm sitting. If there is any, if the stream cuts off randomly, then, of course, that is due to a power cut, most likely. Or obviously, probably with the internet, which is obviously going to be down to the weather. And if that does happen during the stream today, then apologies, but obviously there's nothing I can do about that because the weather is just the way it is. this weekend. The weather horrible all across the UK, especially on the west coast of the UK, and obviously I live in the southwest where it's actually at its worst, the wind. And in some parts of the southwest, it's a red weather warning, which is risk to life. Thankfully, I'm not in that area, but yeah, it's quite bad, the wind, but not as bad as it was forecast to be. It's still quite bad, but luckily, again, with the TV signal, it appears to be all okay so far. So should be okay for the stream. But like I said, if there is any issues, a power cut or the internet cuts off, then again, sorry about that, but nothing I can do about it because it's all down to the weather in regards to that happening. But yeah, should be okay. And if the weather does as it says, it's here in the UK, it is supposed to be better tomorrow. Still windy, but I think about 20 miles an hour less the wind compared to today. So if I get through today's stream okay, it should be absolutely fine for tomorrow. And regarding tomorrow, the final race watch along and watch along in general of the year, my co-commentator Niblo, I believe, will be joining us tomorrow. I don't know that for sure. I don't know if maybe he's got something on in his personal life on that will prevent it from coming along. But yeah, I believe he will be on tomorrow, but we'll see whether he will officially be on. I'll let you guys know about that at the start of tomorrow's stream, of course. But also, probably later on, before we get into qualifying, I will also do a bit of a channel update for you guys in regards to content plans for the winter break. And also let you guys know about a piece of content that I'm actually going to be uploading to the channel later today. Probably a couple hours after this qualifying stream finishes, I'll upload this particular video. And I'll let you guys know more about that, again, later on in this build-up to qualifying. But yeah, we'll get onto that at some point. But yeah, great to see you guys here. And remember, of course, before we go any further, there is a poll running in the live chat. Make sure to vote in that poll and let me know, who do you think will take the final pole position for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and the final pole position, of course, for the final race of the season. Your options: Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, and your 4-times world champion, Max Verstappen. Make sure, of course, to smash the like button. It does obviously help show me that you guys enjoy the content and helps with the algorithm as well. So make sure to do that across the stream. But I think we'll just get into things and start off, of course, with the results from practice 2. Obviously, no weather concerns, as I just saw Astra in the chat say no rain forecast. I'm guessing, yeah, obviously no rain forecast for this Grand Prix, thankfully. That's the probably one of the main things I do actually like about Grand Prix in the Middle East, is you don't have to be worrying about the weather at any point. But McLaren, very, very quick in practice, and it's not a surprise. We knew over a single lap they were going to have the fastest car. Maybe Max Verstappen of the Red Bull, who didn't have a good day yesterday, and to be honest, Max in practice 3 with the handling didn't look that great either earlier on. Practice 3 finished about, I think, an hour or so ago. So, yeah, because of those issues for Max and Red Bull, at the minute, I can't really see anyone able to compete with McLaren. They just look comfortably quicker and clear of the rest of the field. And as long as both drivers deliver their laps in qualifying, then at the minute, I'm pretty sure McLaren are going to end up not just getting pole, but looking out the front row. So, yeah, looking great for McLaren. And if they do lock out the front row, then they are pretty much guaranteed to win the Constructors' Championship tomorrow in the race, where, of course, points are scored. Nico Hülkenberg, 3rd for Haas, and Haas quick with both cars in the top 10. And they look clearly like the best midfield team, and actually are so quick, in fact, that they might be mixing it with a couple front-running, cars like maybe a Mercedes or a Red Bull, in the course of this session. So, yeah, Haas looking brilliant, and this is the perfect response to what happened in Qatar, where in Qatar, they did have, I think, probably just about a faster car than Alpine, but of course they were screwed over by really the safety car and the timing of it, as to Alpine scoring way more points than they did. But with one race to go, obviously Haas are 5 points behind Alpine in the championship, and Haas need to score 6 points tomorrow to overtake Alpine in the championship, as long as, of course, Alpine don't score any points. And looking at their current performance level, that looks like it might be doable. Hulkenberg up in P3 in practice too. I would be very surprised if he maintained that in qualifying, but I think Hulkenberg, if he really pulls out a lap today and a couple others are not quite at it, I mean, we've seen so far Ferrari not quite at it. Hulkenberg, I think, could end up on the third row of the grid. It is not out of the question. So watch out for Nico Hulkenberg. He is definitely one of the drivers to look out for in this session. Carlos Sainz fourth, Lewis Hamilton fifth, Charles Leclerc sixth. Leclerc really been struggling with the balance of the car, and Sainz as well. Ferrari just don't look as good, really, as I expected. And even worse news for Ferrari, Leclerc had a battery issue in practice one, meaning they had to replace the battery, meaning that Charles Leclerc will have a 10-place grid penalty for tomorrow's race. The worst possible time to take a 10-place grid penalty, combined with the fact that Ferrari have never taken pole position or won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So this is not a good track for them historically anyway. It's going to take a miracle, I think, given that Leclerc's got that penalty. It's going to take a miracle, really, for Ferrari to win the Constructors' Championship tomorrow. But, they'll try and give it their best go, I guess, over the course of the weekend. But, yeah, they are not as quick as really they should be. They should be in qualifying trim compared to McLaren. Really, I would say no more than, say, a third of a second off the pace. But they are, in practice too, pretty much 0.6 of a second off. So they're double the time off where they should be. So, yeah, clear issues there with the balance of the Ferrari car. We'll get into the sector time data in a moment just to understand why Ferrari weren't so quick. It wasn't all down to not having the right balance. It was also them, to a degree, sandbagging. But still, there is a lack of pace there compared to what I think we were expecting their type of pace to be compared to McLaren. We weren't expecting Ferrari to be quicker than McLaren, but not as far off as they look to be at the moment. Mercedes, I actually think, look pretty decent. I mean, Lewis Hamilton up in fifth. George Russell obviously was way lower down. I don't know if he was on some different run plan, or got held up for whatever reason. But we know George Russell can be quite a bit quicker than Hamilton in qualifying. So if Hamilton is up there in 5th, 6th place, then that's good omens for Russell, who then could maybe end up in 3rd or 4th. So yeah, watch out for Mercedes. I think definitely in the cooler conditions of qualifying compared to, what we saw early in practice 3, that will suit Mercedes more, as we have seen this season. And I think George Russell absolutely, especially given his form, is someone to watch out for in this session. Valtteri Bottas then in 7th place. Sauber also bringing more upgrades this weekend. They brought upgrades, I think, at the last 3 races, which is a benefit of them being last in the championship since the middle of the season. They've been able to bring or develop their car in the wind tunnel the most of any team. And finally, in these last couple of races, they've actually improved the car. But it's too little too late. But yeah, Valtteri is looking quick. And it's, with the improvements Sauber have made, it is a surprise they're that high up, but it's not a surprise, I don't think, really, that they're showing as maybe top 10 runners, because Valtteri, we know, has always been fast at this track, and Sauber have clearly improved their car by, I would say, probably half a second in these last couple races or so. So, yeah, I think just clear signs of improvement. But again, too little too late from the Sauber team. Kevin Magnussen then in 8th, just behind Bottas, and good to see again both Haas's in the top 10. And would be great with Kevin Magnussen. Obviously, this is his last Grand Prix as a Formula 1 driver. Would be great if Magnussen could keep himself in the top 10 all weekend to go out on a high with Haas. Obviously, a team he's had quite a bit of success with. Alex Albon 9th. Williams looking a lot better than they were in Qatar. We'll get into Franco Colapinto in a moment and the pace he was showing in Sector 1 and Sector 2, because he actually does look to have, Colapinto, some pretty good pace compared to teammate Albon. He just didn't quite show it in the final sector. So Colapinto is someone else to watch out for as well. And then Yuki Tsunoda in P10 for Racing Bulls. 11th, Liam Lawson, who, by the way, there was another report that came out this morning that Lawson is set to replace Sergio Perez at Red Bull for 2025. And the plan, apparently, is going to be Verstappen and Lawson at Red Bull, and then Tsunoda and Isaac Hadjar at Racing Bulls. So, yeah, that looks likely, and it sounds pretty much like what the reports were saying a few days ago as to what Red Bull were planning to do with their driver lineups. And Sergio Perez would become an ambassador and maybe a reserve driver as well for next season. So we'll see if that all comes out, even though Tsunoda apparently is doing a day in the Red Bull next week, I think, in the postseason test. I don't know if that's confirmed, but that's what I've heard. But yeah, it looks like Liam Lawson is going to be in that Red Bull, which I think, Lawson, even though, yeah, he's only had a few races in Formula 1, I think he's shown enough potential to at least deserve a chance. I mean, if you look at Alex Albon when he was in the Red Bull back in 2019, 2020, I'd say Lawson has shown more in the races he's done in Formula 1, more potential than Albon showed in his, few races that he did for Toro Rosso. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes if that all plays out as reported. Pierre Gasly in 12th, Alpine, not really showing the type of pace we were expecting so far, but when we get into the sector time data, we might be able to find a reason as to why that is. George Russell 13th, Sergio Perez 14th, the fastest Red Bull. Red Bull having balance issues. No doubt they will improve on that before qualifying gets underway. Zhou Guanyu 15th, definitely could improve, Zhou, given that his teammate is, 3/10 quicker in 7th place. Alonso 16th, not quite sure why Aston Martin is so slow, given how good they were in Qatar. Max Verstappen 17th, Lance Stroll 18th, Jack Doohan, first Grand Prix in 19th in practice 2, but I mean, it wasn't a great day of practice for Doohan, but I think a lot of the reason he was so far down was because Alpine just weren't very quick in general in Friday practice. And then Franco Colapinto at the back, but that doesn't really tell the story in regards to Colapinto's own performance. But let's get on to the sector times just to understand with certain drivers and teams why it ended up the way it did, and also it gives us a good indication as just how things are probably gonna play out. So the first sector is totally flat out except for the first corner, which is a medium speed corner. McLaren, no surprise, they're the fastest through there, even though it is a pretty much entirely flat out sector. Of course, you've got two very fast corners where the McLaren is at its best, and as you can see, just over a tenth of a second quicker than the next best car, being the Mercedes. Mercedes lapping at a good speed. Don't think you can really ask any more of them. And then third quickest, and just behind fourth, Williams and Aston Martin. Not quite sure why they're so quick in the first sector, but they were. But Franco Colapinto, as you'll see in a moment, also the quickest Williams driver in the second sector. So Colapinto has a lot more pace than what he ultimately showed in practice too. He did also have, I think he broke his floor over the final corner, did Colapinto. So definitely more potential there than what was shown. But yeah, Williams and Aston Martin, very good in the first sector. Ferrari can do better. I'd say probably by a tenth of a second at most. I think they could close the gap to McLaren. Haas, not amazing, but good enough. Same for Sauber. Red Bull also can do a lot better with their first sector time. 3/10 off the pace. Really, they should be at least a quarter of a second quicker than that. So Red Bull definitely have got quite a bit more time to find, but whether they will find it is another story, because they don't always improve the car totally between, you say, Friday practice and Saturday qualifying. Racing Bulls, not very good in the first sector. And Alpine, the slowest, 3.5 off McLaren, but what, how far? Like a tenth and a half, I think it is. Pretty much, or just over a tenth and a half, slower than the Williams in the first sector. Given how good the Alpine has been lately, especially through the corners, just any type of corners in general, there's no excuse for Alpine to be that slow. So Alpine have definitely got at least a tenth, if not a 2/10 of a second find that is absolutely there on the table to find. Whether they'll find it, though, again, is something we'll have to find out in qualifying. But I think definitely Ferrari, Red Bull and Alpine can improve in this part of the lap. And then the middle sector, of course, it is all about straight line speed, really. You've got two long DRS zones, a chicane in between. McLaren, surprisingly, the quickest through the middle sector. Very impressive speed from McLaren, half a tenth quicker than Haas and Sauber. No surprise, Haas and Sauber quick. Obviously got the Ferrari power unit, which is very strong. Mercedes, maybe you could say, should be better off considering how good McLaren are, but I don't think you could ask really much more of Mercedes in terms of how quick they were there. Williams, pretty good. Racing Bulls, okay. Ferrari definitely can improve in this part of the lap. They should be really right there with McLaren, you know, maybe a couple hundredths off at worst compared to McLaren. So yeah, a tenth and a half definitely is there to be found, I think, from the Ferrari team in just the middle sector. Alpine, we know even though they have improved, I think the efficiency of their car in a straight line, they still do have the worst engine on the grid. That is a fact. But then Red Bull, 3.5 off the pace. They also can definitely improve by probably at least a quarter of a second, if not 3/10 of a second. So Ferrari and Red Bull, really looking at what we've had so far, are the teams that I think can definitely improve quite a bit. While so far, for the first two sectors, McLaren and Mercedes, I think, are lapping it really as well as you would expect, given the characteristics of the Sector 1 and Sector 2. And then Sector 3 is really just high-speed corners. Obviously, the final corner is more of a medium-speed corner, but it really does test out the aero of your car. And no surprise, McLaren the best through the final sector. Haas, very impressive, but we have seen through the corners in the last few races that car has been very quick since their upgrade at the US Grand Prix a couple months ago. Red Bull, better, but still should be better than what that pace is. Really, I'd say a tenth maybe better they should be in the final sector. And Ferrari, given the strengths and weaknesses of their car, I think in the final sector, I don't think they could really do more than that. They're just not... In high-speed corners, that's where Ferrari, compared to McLaren and Red Bull, that's where Ferrari are at their weakest. It's the slower speed corners and the straights where Ferrari are able to do more damage to the others when they, are showing some good form. So we'll get on to Ferrari in a moment and how much lap time overall they should be able to find, or how much lap time is there on the table to find if they can find it. Mercedes, I think, can do better, probably a tenth at least, maybe a tenth and a half better in that final sector. And then Sauber, pretty good speed. Racing Bulls, not great. Alpine definitely can do better, especially given how good Haas look. So yeah, a couple tenths of a second, I think, on the table there for Alpine. Williams, not great. And then Aston Martin, for some reason, miles off at the back, which doesn't really make sense given how quick they were in the high-speed corners in Qatar. But overall, if you look at, those practice 2 results, and especially, with McLaren, I don't think they can find any more lap time, really. I think they're maximizing their performance. Mercedes maybe could be a tenth of a second closer, but I think really Mercedes mostly are doing the best they can. Ferrari and Red Bull, though, definitely have quite a bit of time to find. Red Bull, I think, probably can find another half a second. Still wouldn't put them in a position, given how slow they were in practice too, second off the pace. It still wouldn't put them in a position to fight for pole, but it would put them in a position maybe to fight for, third, fourth on the grid. So yeah, half a second is definitely there on the table to find for Red Bull. For Ferrari, I would say probably a quarter of a second, maybe 0.3 of a second at most is available to find. And if they can find that, then that would probably put Ferrari in a position where maybe they could sneak themselves onto the front row of the grid, but realistically end up third and fourth. Alpine, though, another team that I think can find a lot more lap time. I think, especially with the first and final sector, I think Alpine have probably got as well maybe a half a second on the table there to find. And if Alpine can find that, that would put them with Pierre Gasly right in that fight with Haas in the, say, for 7th, 8th on the grid, and would also help Jack Doohan and probably put Jack Doohan in a position where maybe he won't make the top 10, but could end up qualifying 12th or 13th, which I think would be a good first effort for his first ever qualifying session for Doohan. So, yeah, Ferrari, Red Bull, and Alpine, I think, are the teams that can improve the most out of any of the teams so far. But McLaren still, for me, look to be the team to beat. And given that, here are my predictions for qualifying. And I am going for a McLaren 1-2. Lando Norris, I think, will take pole position ahead of Oscar Piastri. George Russell, I think, will end up third. One, because his form lately has been very good. And also, I think Mercedes have actually got a pretty decent car. Leclerc, I think, will end up fourth, just ahead of his teammate Sainz fifth. Leclerc, though, of course, if he does end up in fourth, will have to start 14th in the race because of that 10-place penalty. Max Verstappen, I think, will end up in sixth because even though, even if Red Bull find that half second, again, they'll still be probably about half a second off the pace of McLaren because they were a second off, of course, in practice. So yeah, it's going to take something incredible from Red Bull in terms of fixing the setup to get that car able to be on pole position. And the issue with the Red Bull has been understeer, especially in the medium and slow speed corners. Just too much understeer in the Red Bull. That's why they've just not been on the pace. Hulkenberg, I think, will end up 7th, just ahead of Lewis Hamilton in 8th. Kevin Magnussen, I think, will end up 9th. And Valtteri Bottas, I think, will end up in the top 10 for Sauber. So that is my top 10 qualifying prediction. Let me know, guys, in the chat with about an hour to go now until qualifying begins. Let me just get the timer back on screen. Yeah, we've got an hour to go until qualifying begins. Let me know in the chat for the next hour or so. What do you think is going to happen in qualifying here in Abu Dhabi? Let me know in the live chat. And also, if you haven't voted yet in the poll in the chat, make sure to vote in that poll to let me know out of the 4 options who you think most likely will take pole position for this Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And of course, we will get onto a couple other things before qualifying. Obviously, we'll go through the teams in a bit more depth, and I'll go through each team and explain why I think they'll end up with the result that I have gone for. And then obviously go through some stats and the championship standings right before the session begins as well. But yeah, for the next, say, half an hour or so, we are going to go through your comments in the chat. So keep them coming, and I will get through as many as I can. But again, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. And because, of course, we'll be doing plenty of watch-alongs in 2024, or 2025, sorry. And make sure to smash a like button. Again, does help the channel in the algorithm and helps show me that you guys actually enjoy the content. But, yeah, I'll come to your comments in a moment. And with the likes, by the way, let's try and get up to, say, 20 likes if we can in the next, say, half an hour. That'd be great if we could do that. But, yeah, I'll come to your comments in a moment. Let me just have a quick drink, and then we'll get on to some of your comments. There you go. And actually, before I come on to your comments, I've just remembered that I was going to get into content plans for the winter. Because, of course, this is the final Grand Prix of the year. And I do have plans, content plans for the winter. So, and let me just adjust myself in my seat quickly before I get into this. There you go, a bit more comfortable now. So obviously the plan, obviously I'm streaming today. Tomorrow I'll be live for the race 2 hours before the start at 11 a.m. UK time. Make sure to join us for that final watch along of the year. And hopefully, like I said, my co-commentator Niblo will join us as well. Monday, the day after the race, I will upload the final race review podcast of the season. Of course, the podcasts will continue through the winter. Not every week, but certain weeks I will probably do an odd podcast here and there. So, yeah, there'll be that on Monday. And then in regards to the season, my plans are next Sunday at probably 1 or 2 p.m. UK time. I don't know yet exactly what time it will be, but next Sunday, again, probably around midday or just after midday, I'm going to do a season review stream, but it won't have all of the elements of the season review that I, unnecessarily that you would expect to be in a season review, because one area of the season review that I'm going to do separately as a recorded video, and this is probably going to be uploaded, this particular I guess part of the season review. This will probably be uploaded as a separate video sometime next week. Is I'm going to do a 2024 driver rankings video where I go through from, all 24 drivers that have competed in 2024 and rank them from 24th to 1st. And obviously I'll give my reasons and for each driver why they've ended up in that position. But the reason I want to do that separate video is because it's quite an interesting topic to do as a separate video. So yeah, I'm going to do that as a separate video, and like I said, that'll probably come out sometime in the next week, and then I'll probably show that on the stream next Sunday to just remind you guys of the driver rankings to go along with the season review. But in the season review that we do next Sunday, we will go through what we thought of the season, what some of the best races were. Obviously, we'll go a bit through the championship battle and how it progressed through the season. And I think one main thing I'll probably do in that season review, which will be live again next Sunday afternoon, is really just go through the teams and how I thought the teams performed in 2024. And then, like I said, in terms of how the drivers performed, I'll do that in a separate video before that stream comes out with the driver rankings, where I'll give my thoughts on each driver and how they performed. All the way from 24th to 1st. And then once that's done, I've got at least a couple recorded videos planned for the winter. One is a Lando Norris video in terms of his season and his failure to win the championship, or at least, keep the championship going into the final race. That's a video I am working on, and I will be uploading at some point over the winter. I don't know exactly when, but it will be uploaded at some point. Also, another video that I'm probably going to upload is a video more so looking ahead to 2025 regarding Ferrari, because I am really interested to do a video on them regarding next season, because I think there's a lot of potential at Ferrari for 2025. And also, I probably will do maybe a couple other videos for 2020, looking ahead to 2025 for a couple other teams. So yeah, those are the plans basically for the winter content. So, like I said, tomorrow, race watch along, Monday, podcast, and then sometime in the week before, say, next Saturday, I'll upload my driver rankings for 2024. And then, like I said, next Sunday the 15th of December, live around or just after lunchtime here in the UK, I'll be doing a season review for, I don't know, probably hour and a half, maybe a couple hours. And then after that, it'll be, the content will mainly be, recorded videos like that Norris video and like that, Ferrari video, and maybe a couple other videos as well. There is also another video that I've been working on and just haven't had the time really to get it finished, and I've been working on it really for the last year, and it's more of a historical video. And that video, I want to try, if I can, and get that uploaded as well during the winter, because it's a video that I don't want to just get it uploaded just to get it off my shoulders in terms of that weight of it having not been done. But it's a video that I'm very keen to just get on the channel, but it's having the time to do it, and plus it's going to be a very long video compared to what I usually do. So yeah, there will be a few recorded videos, I hope, during the winter. Of course, pre-season testing is not until the final week of February, so we have I think it's 10 weeks we have until pre-season testing. So, and 10 weeks, I know that doesn't, that sounds a lot, but it really isn't, especially if you're busy doing anything. I mean, I'm obviously busy at university, so those 10 weeks will absolutely fly by. So yeah, obviously this content will be between, when this Grand Prix weekend finishes and when that final week of February comes for pre-season testing. Of course, the first race of next season is the third weekend of March, which is is it the 15th or 14th and 15th of March, I think it is. Might not be the third weekend of March, might be the second. But yeah, that's when the season gets going, a couple weeks later than this one did, and it will be, of course, starting in Melbourne instead of Bahrain. But yeah, that is the plan in terms of winter content. And also, but almost forgot to announce this, yesterday I worked and finished a video that will be uploaded on the channel a couple hours after qualifying finishes today. And the video is about the Max Verstappen and George Russell war of words that has occurred in the last week or so. And in that video, I go through what was said and then I dissect what was said and give my own thoughts on who was justified in what they said, who wasn't, and the likelihood of what was maybe said here and there. So that video will be uploaded, like I said, probably a couple hours after qualifying finishes, around 5, maybe 5:30 p.m. UK time. And make sure when that video comes out, whenever you can, obviously watch it and make sure to give your thoughts on what you thought of what Max had to say about George Russell and what George Russell had to say about Max Verstappen. Because I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say and what your general point of view is. So unfortunately, I don't want to talk about that, in this build up to qualifying, because I've got that video coming out later where I talk about what my viewpoint is. So yeah, I'm not gonna really discuss that stuff until that video has come out. And then obviously tomorrow, I'll be able to talk about it more, but I wanna wait till that video comes out. I don't wanna give anything away, if you know what I mean. But yeah, that's the video that's coming out later today. And the reason I decided to work on that video is because I thought, fuck it, why not? But also, if I wasn't able to stream today because of the weather, I thought, it's an alternative in case I can't stream. But thankfully, I am streaming. But that video, I'll obviously upload anyway. All I've got to do is, after this stream finishes, all I've got to do is make a thumbnail for it and then do the title and description and all that stuff. And then I'll upload it as soon as, really, after I get done with this stream. So, yeah, that's the plan with that. So, plenty of content, really, in the next week heading your way. Obviously, this stream, that video later, and then tomorrow's stream, Monday podcast recording, and then another video maybe 2 or 3 days after that. And then next Sunday will be very likely the last live stream of 2024. And then after that, I'll try and sprinkle in, like I said, that winter content when I can. Obviously, I am busy with uni work as well. We're working on my dissertation, also working on a media project for a client, which is going along, fine at the minute. So I've also got to work on that. So I'm gonna have a pretty busy Christmas and winter in general. Anyway, let's come to what you guys are having to say in the chat. The Woden saying we need a Damon Hill beat himself video. I mean, maybe one day I could do a video on Damon and just why I never really have rated him, but I don't think it would get really that many views, to be honest. So, even though it would be fun to do, I'm not sure it would. I'm not sure people would really be massively interested, because obviously he's been retired for so long, 25 years. But yeah, let's go through your comments, and make sure to keep your comments coming, by the way, guys, as we've only got 45 minutes to go to a qualifying, which is not long at all. That 45 minutes will whiz by. And hello to Astro, hello to the Woden, Craig Brudnell, I think it is, and to Rooks as well, and everyone watching and in the chat. Astro saying Jack doing racing air, I gather, for Alpine replacing Ocon. Yep. Ocon not racing this weekend, but obviously Ocon will be on the grid next year for Haas F1 alongside Oliver Behrman. Astro also saying, if only this year had seen less races at the start that was so dominated by Red Bull. Take those away, and what season we'd have had. Take Max away, and again, what a great season we'd have had, if only. Well, even forget taking away Max, but if you would, yeah, if Red Bull had not been so dominant at the start of the season, then yeah, we would have had a really classic season. But that's the way it played out. And really, the reason Red Bull was so dominant in those early races was because they held on to the advantage they had from the end of 2023. And it wasn't until McLaren and Ferrari brought their first big upgrades of the year, which allowed them to close the gap. Then, of course, Mercedes closed the gap with that front wing upgrade in Canada, and then it was game on. But yeah, Max, still as still the deserving world champion. Even he did have in those first 5-6 races or so, clearly the best car. Yeah, still deserving world champion for me. But yeah, it would have been a even better season. But that's what is going to make 2025, I think, so exciting. Is Red Bull are not going to start the year miles quicker than anybody else, and really, I don't think anyone is going to be starting the year next year miles quicker than anybody else. Of course, we will have a team that is declared the fastest team on the grid, but I don't think that's going to be necessarily whoever the fastest team is. I think it's going to change really weekend to weekend, like it has in the second half of this 2024 season. We've had races where McLaren were the best. Mercedes, obviously, we saw in Vegas, and a couple of other races this year. Red Bull, Ferrari. It has ebbed and flowed as the season has gone on. Let's find some other comments here. Craig Brugnell says that's crazy. Yuki has beaten every teammate who's been partnered with him, except of course Pierre Gasly. But yeah, since Gasly left AlphaTauri, Tsunoda obviously hammered Nick De Vries comfortably. I would say beat Daniel Ricciardo and has been better than Liam Lawson, but Lawson has been, I think, the closest competitor that Tsunoda has had. So that does add stock, I think, to Liam Lawson's credibility, let's say. The Woden says it should be Tsunoda in the Red Bull seat for at least a season. Proper mug off if Lawson gets that seat. I agree. I think Tsunoda should get the seat, but I'm not massively disappointed if Lawson gets it because Lawson, like I said, he's been the closest competitor to Tsunoda in the last, say, year and a half or so. And I think Lawson, has proven that he does have quite a bit of quality. Whether it's good enough for Red Bull, we are going to find out. But yeah, I think Lawson, like I said, given that Albon got his chance a few years ago, I think Lawson deserves a chance. As much maybe not as much as Tsunoda, but he deserves a chance. Absolutely. But yeah. Astra says Colapinto deserves an AlphaTauri / Toro Rosso seat in my view, or Racing Bulls, of course. Give Hadjar more time unless he wins the F2 title, which he might still. Yeah, the F2 championship coming to a close this weekend. I've not paid much attention to it lately, I will be honest. But it does look like it is going to be won, most likely, by Gabriel Bortoleto, who is, well, I think I should revise saying most likely. He is half a point clear, Bortoleto, at the top of the championship. Hadjar only half a point behind. And then you've got Paul Aron, who I think does technically still have a chance of winning the championship, but it is between Bortoleto and Hadjar. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Victor, what do you call it? I think the sprint race has already happened. Yeah, it has. The sprint race, I think, has already happened, and it looks like Bortoleto finished in second place. Don't know what happened to Hadjar, but I don't know what the grid is for the feature race. Let me just have a quick look. As I saw, Antonelli withdrew from the sprint race for some reason. Yeah, let me just have a quick look. So, yeah. Pepe Marti won the sprint race. Bortoleto, though, finished in second, and Hadjar finished in sixth. And then the starting grid for the feature race, which, of course, is tomorrow. Bortoleto is second on the grid, and Isaac Hadjar is fourth on the grid. So, basically, whoever finishes ahead of the other wins the championship because they're only separated by half a point. So you can't have, Bortoleto finishing behind Hadjar but still winning the championship. So it's all gonna come down to who finishes ahead. So you've got Victor Martins on pole, Paul Aron third, still again a chance at winning the championship, I think, technically, or maybe he's half a point shy of having a chance. I'm not quite sure. But looking at the grid, I would say Bortoleto probably wins the championship. And, of course, Gabriel Bortoleto will be on the grid next season, a driver that I have got high hopes for. He's a very good driver. He won the F3 championship, I think, last season. So, would be quite impressive for Bortoleto, if he won the F3 championship and then followed that up a year later by winning the F2 championship. Definitely a very good driver is Gabriel Bortoleto, and is maybe for Audi their driver of the future. We'll have to see in when he comes into Formula One next year. But yeah, Isaac Hadjar, Red Bull. The reason Red Bull like Hadjar is because of his feedback. They're very big on him because of that. So, and they've liked him for years because of that. So yeah, that's why he is probably gonna get his chance. And Hadjar, he's a good racing driver, but whether he's good enough for Formula One, I don't know. My guess is I don't think he will be, because I don't think he has quite enough talent to make it in Formula One, especially on a consistent basis. But we'll wait and see, because he could easily prove me wrong. By the way, cheers guys for getting us up to 23 likes. Let's try and get up to 30 likes now, if we can, in the next, say, 20 minutes or so. Craig asking, what do you think of the Max George spat? Like I said, I'll save my thoughts for the video, which will come out later. And Craig also saying, as far as Haas is concerned, I think it's telling that all of the progress has been made since Steiner left. Yeah, I always have trouble pronouncing his name, but Ao Komatsu, I think, is it? The new team boss of Haas. He has been one of the team principals of the season. The turnaround he has made to that team. Remember, Haas F1 finished last in the championship last year, not because they had a bad car, it was because in the race couldn't look after their tires and they were just very inefficient in race situations. But he has completely turned that around, and now Haas are a team that can score points at every Grand Prix. So yeah, he's got to be, I think, one of the team principals of the year in terms of the improvement he's made to that team. Also, sorry for the throat, but also Andrea Stella has got to be up there for team principal of the year. Fred Vasseur as well. I think probably, yeah, I'd say Vasseur, Stella, and Komatsu. I think have got to be probably the top three shouts for team principal of the year. Probably my top three, and maybe you could say in that order as well. Um, let's find some other comments here. I will make sure to post a link of the stream out in a few minutes. Astra asking Shazza, who do you rate higher, Damon Hill, Keke Rosberg, or Alan Jones? Pretty difficult to compare because I mean the reason it's difficult to compare is because when Keke Rosberg won his championship, the competition in Formula One was, I mean, there was a lot of competition, but there wasn't, you didn't have an outstanding elite driver like Michael Schumacher, like you had in Damon's era, or of course, Senna, Prost, who Damon also raced against. Um, I'd say Keke I'd put over Damon, and probably Alan Jones as well, but I'd put Alan Jones over Damon as well. But again, it's difficult because the quality of the grid in the early 80s, even though it was very competitive, I'm not sure the quality was as high as it was in, say, at the top end of the grid, as it was, say, in 93, 94, 95, and then obviously going into the late 90s as well. But, that's my personal opinion. Nicholas says, as Laurie Rastogi, good to see, he says Lawson has potential. Absolutely. Nicholas says, well, I think Red Bull will be fine in 2025. And now the question is, can Max Verstappen get 5 in a row? And for goodness sakes, Red Bull put Yuki in the car for next season. Maybe even get Lawson. Maybe. Well, Perez, I'm pretty sure, in terms of hearing what we're hearing coming out of Red Bull, I'm pretty confident Perez is done at the Red Bull team. Again, I would go with Tsunoda in that car, but they've decided by the looks of it that they're going to go with Lawson. But just replacing Perez, first off, is good enough for me. So yeah, I'm not going to complain too much about that. Hello to Nib, by the way. Good to see you in the chat. Laurie says Sauber have got a very good driver lineup next year. Yeah. Hulkenberg and Bortoletto. It is a good driver lineup, but my worry is that they are, yet again, Sauber, going to produce a terrible car. And if they do, then there's only so much Hulkenberg and Bortoletto can do with their machinery. Another person in the chat called Chazza. There's both Haas in Q3. Yep, I agree. I think both Haas's will get through. Woden says Bortoletto will be further ahead, but last week he pitted under a safety car, which you can't do in F2, right? Yeah, I didn't see anything really of F2 in Qatar because I was focusing on Formula One, really, and other stuff. Rook's asking thoughts on Merck not allowing Hamilton to do the postseason testing with Ferrari. It's just it's petty bullshit. I mean, I don't think the drivers actually learn that much in regards to those postseason tests with a new team, because the cars are so much different, from one season to the next in terms of, the Ferrari at the start of next season is going to be probably what a few tenths of a second per lap quicker than than the one now. So it'll feel like like a different car probably. So there's nothing Lewis is going to benefit from magically from doing that postseason test. So I just think it's petty bullshit, but not surprising from Mercedes, who can be quite a petty team. Laurie says K-Mag will probably undeliver in qualifying. Hopefully not. Russell definitely going to underdeliver. He's been pretty good lately, so we'll see about that. Laurie says, I don't think good to start and recruit with the right people and didn't get rid of the people responsible for the design of the car. The problem with the design of the car is obviously it's not designed by them, is it? It's Delara, doing the design, and then obviously with their technical partnership with Ferrari, that obviously now it's going to be changing. They're now going to be going with Toyota, I think, is within next season. In terms of having a technical partnership, they're bound really to how good Ferrari are. Obviously, Ferrari's car has been a lot better this year than it was last year, and obviously, Haas have benefited from that as well. So there's not a ton you can do really. Astra says Red Bull Racing just totally stuffs Yuki around, treats him like shit, like they did to Webber, Gasly, Albon, Ricciardo, etc. But even worse, he deserves better. Yeah, I mean, even though he's in not a great situation in terms of, he's in a team that maybe he doesn't deserve to be in and deserves something a bit better, there is still chances for him going forward. Aston Martin obviously is still an option for 2026, and we'll see whether Aston Martin eventually will get rid of Lance Stroll, which they have to if they want to. What do you call it? They have to do that, Aston Martin, if they want to be world champion material in the future, because they'll never win a championship with Lance Stroll in that car. No way. But anyway, I will come on to more of your comments in a moment, guys. Keep them coming. But I am just going to quickly post the link of the stream out one final time, and then we'll get on to a few more comments, and then I'll go through the teams and just give my overall thoughts as to how I think they'll all do. So yeah, just let me do this quick. Come join us here to Watchalong, the final qualifying session of 2024 in Abu Dhabi. And there you go. So hopefully we'll get some others joining soon. And I'll read out a few more comments and then we'll move on. Neil saying Ganga works, seeing our game postponed. Maybe want to put my head in the heat locker with pork. Nib also saying, also Red Bull fucked this by having Lawson in the RB this season, like he should have been. Absolutely, but I think in the end for Lawson it's all worked out. But yeah, he should have a lot more races under his belt. It was in hindsight, not really worth it at the end. Bringing Ricardo back. I mean, and I get a big reason why they did it was for, the sponsorships and the PR, but you're not going to go anywhere if you're hiring drivers for that reason. Woden says the way the engine harvests and delivers energy will be very different from Mercedes, so a test would be beneficial. I mean, yeah, stuff like that, but stuff like that would be, I guess he'd be keen to learn, but it's not anything he can't, it's not something that he's not gonna learn pretty quickly in, in preseason testing anyway. So, like I said, you don't learn, I don't think, a whole much really from those postseason tests. I think mainly those postseason tests, it's more about, seat fitting and just starting to build a relationship with your engineers. I think that's really the only main couple areas that are important in that. But I don't think that's going to give Lewis Hamilton a secret advantage over Mercedes next season. So I don't really get why Mercedes stopped Lewis from doing that. Astros, I still reckon Ricciardo would have done better in that car than Perez this year. Probably, but would he have done as well as Lawson or Tsunoda had they been given the chance? I'm not so sure. So I think you're probably right, but we can't just use that as a benchmark as well. As long as you're better performing than Perez, then that's good enough. They need to ideally put someone in the car who's going to be as close to Max as possible. And out of that, those three options of Ricciardo, Lawson, and Tsunoda, I think Tsunoda probably would be consistently the closest, but we'll see how Lawson does. With Lawson, I think the only criticism you could have is that he can maybe be a tad inconsistent, but my argument against that would be that he's not really been given enough races in Formula One to build consistency. So, yeah. Right, I'll read out a couple more comments and then we'll go into the teams quickly. Stephen M, do you think Perez being in such bad form affected Red Bull in the championship, not just in terms of points, but not having effective upgrades if his comments and data were poor? I mean, Sergio Perez definitely is the biggest reason, in my view, why Red Bull did win the championship, Constructors' Championship this year. I know some people like to make out, but the Red Bull car, really dropped off and was just not good enough. Yeah, it did drop off, but it still wasn't bad enough to the point where Perez's performances were excusable. They just weren't. And I remember a couple of days ago, I actually sent this to Nib. Just incredible comment by Sergio Perez, where he claimed that, if only Red Bull had tried hard enough, they would have won the championship. Which is so ironic coming from him when he's literally the biggest reason why that team has not won the Constructors' Championship. Yeah, the car's not been the best car on the grid this season, but he has been given plenty of chances to step up and deliver the pace or the results that realistically he should have been getting. And most of the time this year, he has been nowhere near where he should have been. We look at the last race in Qatar, he was actually doing not too bad. Because of a couple of punctures, I think he got to 4th place, and then he spins under a fucking safety car. At that point, what can you do as a team? And then, I think one thing that a few races ago really frustrated me was in Baku, suddenly is quick, right up there fighting, for the race win. I know he's always been quick at Baku, but why all of a sudden is he so quick there, but then everywhere else he is just absolute dog shit? You can't just say, oh, but the cars is designed or engineered towards Max, therefore Perez is given a pass. You can't say that, because the car, still was most likely engineered towards Max in 2022. Yet in 2022, Sergio Perez was performing probably as well as he could have in that car compared to Max Verstappen. That's the thing people have to remember, is it's not like Sergio has never performed to a level that's been good enough at Red Bull. He was good enough at Red Bull once upon a time, back in, say, 2022. That was his best season as a Red Bull driver. He won, what was it? Did he have 3 race wins that year? Or 2 race wins? And was consistently, up there on the podium, 3rd, 4th, 5th place at worst. Yeah, I know the car was better that year than it was this year, but he was a lot closer to Max on pure performance than he's been, last year or this year. So again, it's not like Perez has never shown us he's good enough. He has, and then dropped completely away from that level. So Sergio Perez, for me, has to take the blame for Red Bull not winning the Constructors' Championship, because Red Bull are currently, 60 points behind McLaren in going into this final race. Of course, Red Bull can't win the championship. They're now too far behind. 60 points, that's not as many points as you guys may think it is, especially, over the course of 24 races. If Perez had performed pretty much every race to the standard that he was a couple years ago, Perez, would have picked up per race a few extra points that would have allowed Red Bull to probably going into this final race, be in the lead of the Constructors' Championship. So, yeah, Sergio Perez has to take the blame. No doubt about that. Right, I'll find one final comment and then we'll crack on. KH saying Carlos Sainz should be with Red Bull. I mean, in terms of quality, yeah, that'd be ideal, but Max and Carlos, I don't think could be in the same team, really, given especially the entourages that surround those two. And yeah, what was it? Craig saying Perez cost Red Bull the Constructors. I can't really see them forgiving that. And also, you have to remember the engineers, they're definitely not going to forgive him, because obviously you get a bonus for winning the Constructors' Championship, which, they had for the last couple years and they won't be getting this year. So Red Bull have every right to be resentful towards Sergio Perez, because he did not step up and perform like he should have. That's just, a simple fact at the end of the day. Anyway, let's come away from this and let's just go through the teams quickly, as we've got just over 15 minutes to go until qualifying begins. Let's just go through the teams and go through how I feel they'll all get on in this session. So starting with Red Bull, not looking great so far. There is quite a bit of time, though, out there to find, at least half a second, maybe more, if they can really get the setup right. They've been struggling with understeer this weekend, have Red Bull, especially with Verstappen's car. So Red Bull are going to improve. They're not going to be outside the top 10 with both cars. There's no chance of that. But I do not see a pole position car here. I just don't see it. I know I said that a week ago for the Qatar Grand Prix, and they ended up on pole. But I think in Qatar, they were initially a lot closer to the front than they have been here. So, and McLaren look even stronger than they were a week ago in Qatar. So, yeah, Red Bull, I don't see as being pole position contenders. I think, though, third, fourth on the grid, absolutely, they could get. But if Red Bull get pole with Verstappen, that would be really an incredible turnaround given the balance of the car that we have seen so far. Him understeering at turn one, for example, more than once over the course of the weekend. Ferrari, they do not look at all like pole position contenders. They look like they're probably going to be fourth, fifth on the grid, probably at best, even though they've also got a bit of time out there, I think, to find if they can find it. I think there's probably, say, 0.3 of a second extra they could find. But again, whether they can or not, we'll have to see. Leclerc was still complaining about the balance of the car, even in practice 3. Of course, Leclerc, we have to remember, has a 10-place grid penalty for the new battery that they had to fit in practice 1. So Leclerc's got to try, really, and get second or third, realistically, is the best Ferrari could get, to try and minimise the damage ahead of Ferrari trying to do what is looking like a miracle now and win their first Constructors' Championship in 16 years. But Mercedes don't actually look that bad at all. And I think if George Russell can get it together and produce the best lap possible in qualifying, I think Russell could end up absolutely on the second row of the grid, maybe even third in qualifying today. And I think even a front row is possible, but I don't think Mercedes are quick enough to get pole position. I think McLaren are just a bit too far out of reach for that. But George Russell, the form he's been in, plus Mercedes enjoying the cooler conditions in the evening of when obviously qualifying takes place, that's helping the Mercedes car. And Mercedes lapping at, I would say, a decent or good speed considering the strengths and weaknesses of their car. So watch out for Mercedes. They are contenders, not necessarily for pole, but for a strong grid position nonetheless. And for McLaren, they are clearly the favourites for pole position. And not just pole position, a front row lockout. As long as both drivers produce their best laps in Q3, really, it should be a front row lockout for Norris and Piastri. And if they were to get that, then surely the Constructors' Championship would be coming back to McLaren for the first time in 26 years. Because if you look at the history of teams that have locked out the front row here in Abu Dhabi, normally they go on to secure that in the Grand Prix. Aston Martin looking really slow for some reason. I think they can find more time, Aston Martin, but I don't think they're top 10 runners here. Even though Fernando Alonso earlier on the radio was trying to pump himself up, saying he feels positive today, I'm not sure how serious he actually was. I don't think this car is top 10 material, I'm afraid, which is sad because obviously a week ago in Qatar, they were looking quite strong with Fernando in that midfield pack. Racing Bulls look decent, but realistically, just not top 10 material. They could still get in the top 10, though, because Tsunoda and Lawson, have the potential to produce maybe a real special lap in qualifying. And if they can do that, it could see them in the top 10. But realistically, I think they'll end up probably 11th and 12th or 12th and 13th, something like that. But might be able, if they can get a grid position like that, might be able then to go on and end up getting a couple points on Sunday. Alpine, not great in practice, but I think definitely can find another, say, half a second from what they were showing in practice. I don't think we've seen the best of Alpine so far this weekend. And if they can find that extra half second, then it would put them right in the fight with Haas and other teams for the top 10 and see probably Pierre Gasly in his normal position as of late, 7th, 8th on the grid. And obviously would help Jack Doohan in his first ever qualifying session to be in a competitive state. Williams looking a lot better than they did a week ago in Qatar. Watch out for Franco Colapinto, who only really was slower than Albon because of the really bad final sector he did in practice 2 yesterday. He was actually quicker than Albon in sector 1 and sector 2. So watch out for Colapinto. May have a bit of a return to form for the Argentine, even though he did break his floor in practice 2, which is why he didn't do as much running in that session as he wanted to. But yeah, Williams not looking bad at all, and possible dark horses for this session. And also, same for Sauber, Valtteri Bottas up in the top 10 in practice 2. And Sauber have looked pretty good with Bottas this weekend. Watch out for Valtteri Bottas. He could be the surprise of the session. And for Haas, looking at the timings so far this weekend, they should be best of the rest in the midfield and may even mix it with a couple of the front-running cars. A fourth row lockout could very well be possible for this team today. But let me go on to, again, in case you guys missed it, my top 10 predictions for qualifying. McLaren, I think, will take the 1-2. Norris on pole with Piastri second. And then I'm going Russell third. Leclerc 4th, Sainz 5th, Verstappen 6th, Hülkenberg 7th, Hamilton 8th, Magnussen 9th, and Valtteri Bottas, I think, will end up in P10. As we have got less than 10 minutes now until qualifying is underway. I'll sync up the timer at the 8-minute to go mark, which will be in a moment. And there you go. So 8 minutes to go until qualifying begins. And make sure to get your final comments in chat. What do you think is going to happen here in qualifying? Nib saying, thank God you were here, Chaz. No problem. Will F1 saying Bottas needs 5 points to make top 20 in the championship. Yeah. Well, to get that, obviously, you can't score 5. Well, you can score 5 points in a race, but realistically for Sauber, they're not going to be able to finish 8th tomorrow and take the fastest lap. That's highly unlikely. But, yeah, it would be nice to see Valtteri at a points finish because he's behind Zhou in the championship, and I think Bottas is, was it 22nd in the championship? It would be, and it probably is going to finish this way anyway, but it's going to be disappointing that he's going to finish behind Zhou in the championship because he doesn't deserve to finish behind Zhou. He's been clearly better than Zhou, who was a bit lucky to finish 8th in Qatar, to be honest. And there you go, guys. Confirmation in the chat. Nib saying, I will be on tomorrow, by the way. Good. Because, yeah, it's been... I can't remember how long it's been now. It's been... Was it the US Grand Prix? No, I don't think it was. I think Baku was the last time you were on, which was nearly 3 months ago. And hopefully the race tomorrow is as good as that one. But I think that was the last time you were on. But yeah, obviously would have been on for Vegas, but my satellite signal decided to shit itself. And then unluckily last week there was, that massive game on. So yeah. But hopefully we're gonna get a final race where we get some action. The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix doesn't always deliver. We've had some decent racing in the last couple years at this track, but nothing really super memorable, I would say. So, yeah. Right, let me find a couple more comments if I can. Rook saying Jote. Thankfully, it does appear that this will be Zhou Guan Yu's final race on the grid. I've never, he's a nice guy, but I've never believed in the guy in terms of thinking he was good enough for Formula One. I've just never got the feeling that he was a proper Formula One driver, to be honest. And Sauber are not going to lose anything by not having him in their team. And I don't see why anybody else would want to have him in their team, because he's just not good enough. Saying that, I do think if he can find a spot in WEC, the World Endurance Championship, I think he could have a decent career there, or maybe in GT racing, or even maybe Formula E if a spot becomes available. You know, I think he'd have a decent career, but he's just not Formula One level. He just isn't. And I think from day one, he just hasn't been Formula One level, I'm afraid. But we have got just under 4 minutes to go until qualifying begins here in Abu Dhabi. And as the F1 intro is playing, let's get rid of this countdown and get into a final couple things before qualifying. So the Drivers' Championship, of course, Max Verstappen won that a couple weeks ago in Las Vegas. 80 points clear he is of Lando Norris. Norris only 8 points clear of Leclerc, so Norris doesn't want to have a disaster this weekend. Not only for the team in terms of the Constructors' Championship, but he wants to make sure to hold on to second in the Drivers. Leclerc third, Piastri fourth. Piastri should hold on to fourth this weekend. Sainz fifth, Russell in sixth, Hamilton seventh, Perez eighth, Alonso ninth, and Hülkenberg 10th. Hülkenberg, by the way, only 1 point clear of Pierre Gasly. He's made a lot of progress in the last few races. And on the constructor side, McLaren just 21 points clear of Ferrari. Ferrari absolutely could overturn that deficit, but realistically, it looks like it's heading McLaren's way. Red Bull third, Mercedes fourth, Aston Martin fifth, and Alpine are in sixth. 5 points clear of Haas, with Racing Bulls in eighth. 13 points clear, behind Alpine in the championship. Williams in ninth, and Sauber finally. I don't have to say they're pointless. They do have points, but they're still useless and at the back of the field. But let's go on to the front-running teams and some stats regarding those teams before we head any further. Max Verstappen, of course, took pole position last year in Abu Dhabi, and Red Bull have taken pole in Abu Dhabi 4 times since 2015, and those 4 poles have been in the last 4 years. The last team to get pole position in Abu Dhabi that wasn't Red Bull was Mercedes in 2019. Red Bull have absolutely dominated this event since 2020. Red Bull's last official pole position, though, 13 races ago in Austria, which was at the very end of June. For Ferrari, they've never had a pole here in Abu Dhabi. Despite the Ferrari world and all the investment that's gone into that, they have had horrible luck around this Grand Prix. Have taken 4 pole positions in 2024. Their last pole position 4 races ago in Mexico, just before Halloween. For Mercedes, they've had some success here. Last pole position in Abu Dhabi 2019 with Lewis Hamilton. Have taken 5 poles here since 2015. And they have started on pole in the last 2 races with, of course, George Russell. Can they keep that up in this final Grand Prix? And for McLaren, their last pole position here in Abu Dhabi was in 2012 with Lewis Hamilton, one of the final poles Hamilton had for McLaren. And McLaren, since this race began in 2009, have had 2 pole positions at this event. Even though they've been very quick in qualifying this year, though, their last pole position was 6 races ago in Singapore, which was, middle of September. Very long time ago for a team like McLaren. But let's go on to qualifying now. Of course, I'll just get rid of that and get the timer ready. And of course, Q1 will be a 18-minute long session, and as you can see on the screen, the cut-off line and the drivers in red. Whoever's in that drop zone at the end of the 18 minutes will be starting the race from those positions. As qualifying has officially begun. And like I said earlier, if you can't hear any background noise, it's just the wind outside my bedroom window, which is not far from my microphone. But yeah, if you can't, then good for you, because all I can hear is loud thrashing outside. But in this session, because Sauber are looking so quick, it's hard really to say who we're looking at most likely to be eliminated in this part of qualifying. As by the way, nobody has come out on track yet. Jack Doohan, I think you could probably say likely, just given that it's been, this is first Formula One Grand Prix. As let me just adjust the position of that timer. There you go. Is that better? Let me just adjust this as well. So yeah, that's better. Yeah, Doohan, I think you say likely, as we've got an Aston Martin of Stroll out. I think Stroll definitely, because Aston Martin are not quick. So yeah, Stroll, Doohan, Zhou, I think you could throw in there. And then after that, probably going to have a surprise or two. Because, Haas look quick, Racing Bulls look quick, Williams, when both drivers nail their laps, look quick. Alpine, I think I've got more pace in the bag than they've shown so far. So this is going to be, in the midfield especially, a very interesting qualifying. Because it's not clear who should be eliminated at, each part of the session. As also Fernando Alonso on track. Of course, this venue, a heartbreaking location for Fernando. 14 years ago, he came so close to winning his third World Championship. Would have been his first with the Scuderia. But his team screwed him over. And then, obviously, all the blame went on a certain Russian who just drove his own race and drove it well, if I may say. As Lance Stroll, who I don't remember him ever having a good result here, but let's see if we can do something in this session. By the way, pole position today should be a mid 122. So a mid 122, say a 22.4, I'd say at best. So that's the lap time we're looking out for qualifying today. So if anyone can dip into the 1 minute 22s in this session, you'll know that that is a very quick lap time. And in this session, you'll want to be doing probably a low 123 to make sure you get through to Q2, like a 23.2, 23.1 at least. As all Stroll oversteering on the exit of the turn 7 and 8 chicanes, which splits the two long DRS zones. And yeah, the Aston Martin just doesn't look very good. Stroll also at the hairpin where Max Verstappen famously or infamously passed Lewis Hamilton a few years ago. Stroll understeering like mad through that corner. So yeah, this is not a good lap. And he also locked up Stroll a couple corners ago, but he's coming to the end of his lap now. And it's going to be a very slow lap time. 124.3. That is diabolical from the Canadian. But diabolical and Lance Stroll does go together quite nicely. So yeah, 124.3 for Stroll. Pretty bad start for him. As we're looking at the Racing Bulls car of Liam Lawson, is it? I think, or Sonoda, who's just going through the tunnel, pit lane exit. as we've got loads of cars, almost all the cars now, coming out of the pit lane to start their outlap. And yeah, the reason they're only coming out now is because the tyres not able to do 2 flying runs. So that's why they're only going to go for a single run on the tyres per run they do. Here is Sergio Perez in what is probably going to be his final race at Red Bull, and very well could be his final race as a Formula One driver. 2011 Australian Grand Prix was the first Grand Prix of his career where he, on track, produced a great result, then got disqualified. But he has had a great career. We have to remember that. He has had a brilliant career considering the teams he's raced for, but in these last couple years, Perez has been washed, sadly, and definitely is past his prime. And it's time for Sergio Perez to step aside, and hopefully Red Bull will announce that officially after this Grand Prix weekend, as Perez only 2/10 quicker than Stroll after the first 2 sectors, so this is also a poor lap from Sergio Perez. As Perez passing a slow Ferrari there, but I don't think he was really held up by the scarlet red car, as Perez through the final couple corners, as Sergio Perez does a 1:23.5, which is still not a good lap time. Perez will have to improve on that by probably at least half a second if he wants to be in Q2. As Max Verstappen is down a lap, purple first sector. As Perez has now had that time deleted for a track limit violation, so goes from bad to worse. As Franco Colapinto goes second on a 24.4. As Verstappen, another purple sector. Albon now goes quickest on a 24.1. Not very quick lap times at the moment. I was expecting them, especially Albon, I would have expected a 1:23 from him. Tsunoda does goes even quicker than him. But still, 1:24.0. Here comes Max Verstappen, though. And Verstappen does a 23.5, which is only slightly quicker than Sergio Perez went, even though Perez's time was deleted. So, not very quick from Max Verstappen. As Zhou up to third, Leclerc up to second on a 23.7. And yeah, to me, these lap times are just not very quick, as Carlos Sainz does a 23.4. The best lap time I'm expecting in this session is probably around about what Carlos Sainz has done. But I don't know. I was expecting maybe a statement from Red Bull or Verstappen maybe to go a bit quicker than that, just to show they're they're in the fight, if you know what I mean. As Valtteri Bottas goes up to 5th, Liam Lawson is up to 7th. Kevin Magnussen goes up to 3rd, as Lando Norris only goes 4th. So that is clear evidence right there that these lap times are not very good, because McLaren really should be going quickest, as Oscar Piastri replaces Lando Norris in 4th place. So there you go. And then you got it's actually Leclerc down in 6th. Kevin Magnussen's the one up in 3rd. Let me just update that. So Magnussen 3rd, and then Piastri, Norris, Leclerc, Hulkenberg up to 7th. So a good start for the American team. And then Tsunoda 8th, Bottas 9th, Gasly is 10th. Alonso now goes up to 8th. And then Bottas 10th, Gasly 11th, Zhou 12th, Doohan 13th, Lawson 14th, and then Albon 15th and Stroll in 16th. As George Russell sets his first time of the session, but it's only a 1:23.7 and puts him only 8th. As Lewis Hamilton only goes 9th, so not a good start for Mercedes. 8th and 9th. Nowhere near where you would have expected them to be, as Lance Stroll improves massively up to 8th place and actually did a purple middle sector. So, track improving. But in the drop zone, we've got Doohan, Lawson, Albon, Colapinto, Perez. Colapinto and Perez have not set a legal lap time. They did do a lap, both those drivers, but they were deleted for track limit violations. We're seeing with Perez where it was the exit of turn 1. But yeah, in terms of what I expected the best lap times of Q1 to be, it's again about what Sainz has done at 123.4. And I actually made a mistake earlier saying that you need to do like a 123.1 or so to get through to Q2. I accidentally said that. I actually meant a low 124 is what I meant, not a low 123. If you did a low 123 in this session, you would probably be quickest by a couple tenths of a second. So yeah, Zhou, for example, in 15th, the driver at risk, is on a 124.1. So the lap time, the cut-off lap time is probably going to be a late 123. Very close between the drivers that have set a time so far. Only, I think, 7/10 of a second separating the top 18. So it is incredibly close and a lot closer than I expected it to be in this first part of qualifying, I must say. As we're looking at Franco Colapinto with 5.5 minutes to go in Q1. And Colapinto hasn't done a time yet, but I'm sure if he can do a legal lap time, I'm sure it could be good enough to get him in to the second part of qualifying. As Sergio Perez looking over his telemetry to understand why am I so shit. Jack Doohan currently in 16th, but he's only 0.011 of a second behind Zhou. So if he can just focus on his own improvement and improve by 2 or 3 tenths of a second, then Doohan should be able to get himself through. And Doohan only, I think it's less than a tenth away from his teammate Gasly. So Doohan, I think, is actually doing a good job so far, given that Gasly's only 2 positions ahead. And if Doohan can somehow out-qualify Gasly this weekend, then surely that's good enough evidence for Alpine to start the season with Doohan and Gasly as their driver lineup, because there's still rumours that Alpine are keen on Franco Colapinto, who is now on his final lap in Q1. Albon also for the in the other Williams car on his final lap. Colapinto on a good lap. It's just this final sector. Can he get that right? He didn't get it right yesterday, breaking his floor, I think, at the final corner. But looks better this time around. Into the final corner he comes. And, yep, copes with it fine. And he goes up to P11. Not sure if that's going to be good enough, but that's a good effort as Alex Albon goes ahead of Colapinto, his teammate, and goes up to 10th place. So the drop zone now, Gasly, Zhou, Doohan, Lawson, and Perez. As Sergio Perez has had his lap time reinstated. So clearly did not exceed the track limits after further review. So Perez now up to 3rd place. Just like that, the pressure has been taken off. So in the drop zone now, with 2.5 minutes to go, Bottas, Gasly, Zhou, Doohan, and Lawson. So both Saubers, both Alpines, and the Racing Bulls. The Racing Bull of Lawson is, what a mess in the pit lane there. A Sauber stopping to not come out and hit Perez, and then the Sauber ended up blocking a couple other cars. And yeah, Perez has had the time reinstated because he just about, I think, kept his front left on the white line, the very edge of the white line. So Perez getting away with it there. As Valtteri Bottas does the first sector on his final qualifying one run. Can he get through? You'd think he can, given how quick he's been this weekend. And he's used to performing under pressure in qualifying at this track. Has taken pole position here back in 2017. As he's about to complete the middle sector. The middle sector where probably Sauber is at its strongest, given its power unit. And yeah, he's looking good so far. This is probably going to be a lap time that puts him, if he keeps up the lap time he's doing, 3 tenths up on Tsunoda, probably put him in the top 10. But the final sector here is so important. By far, the most important part of the track in qualifying. Because you can have a good lap up until that point, but if you mess up the final sector, you are doomed. Zhou goes up to 12th. Valtteri Bottas goes quickest on a 1:23.4. That's definitely good enough. Bottas to the top of the timesheets for Sauber. If you're a Sauber fan, take a picture quick of the order. As Tsunoda goes up to 11th, so that means Colapinto is out. Lewis Hamilton now at risk as Lawson having to deal with so much traffic, and somehow we got through it without being held up massively. And Lawson now goes up to 11th. As here comes Pierre Gasly, who goes 4th. What an improvement by Gasly. The checkered flag has now fallen. These are your final laps as Leclerc now goes quickest on a 1:23.3. And the drop zone now Zhou, Hamilton, Colapinto, Alonso and Doohan. But there are still people out there on laps. Albon in the pit lane in 15th might be eliminated here if Hamilton can improve. Hamilton, though, has not improved his first sector. We're looking at George Russell, who's about to complete the middle sector. Russell should be fine to make it into Q2, but it's Hamilton we need to be looking at, as Max Verstappen did a purple middle sector but did not improve his lap. Hamilton just about up on Albon, but only by 0.08 of a second as Zhou has pitted. He is out in 16th. Here comes George Russell to the final corner as Alonso goes 15th and pushes both Williams out as Russell goes up to 9th. What can Lewis Hamilton do in his final qualifying for Mercedes? Oh dear, he ends up in 18th place. An absolute disaster as Jack Doohan ends up last. And Lewis Hamilton, in his final qualifying session for the Mercedes team, at a track where he's taken pole so many times in his career, has qualified 18th. And says on the radio, messed that up big time, guys. Fuck. And absolutely he did. And that sums up his season. He's had some decent race pace, but his season has been hampered by repeated poor qualifying attempts. But that, guys, is Q1 over and done with. Let's go through the drivers that have made it through to the second part of, as that, I think, and I noticed that under the car, he had something stuck under his car. I don't know if that was during his lap, but he had a cone stuck under his car. But again, I don't know if that was during the lap that cost him the lap time or whether that was after. I'm not quite sure. It probably during the final bit of it. We'll have to see a replay there for Lewis Hamilton. But yeah, cone stuck under his car. And is this going to be where it is? No. Oh, well, that's where Magnussen knocked the cone onto track by getting out of the way on the inside of the third to last corner. And then Lewis Hamilton drove over it. And that would have affected the downforce a bit in those final couple corners. Anyway, let's go through the drivers that are on their way to Q2. Charles Leclerc, Valtteri Bottas, Carlos Sainz, Max Verstappen, Pierre Gasly, Sergio Perez, Kevin Magnussen, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, Lando Norris, Nico Hulkenberg, Lance Stroll, Liam Lawson, Yuki Tsunoda, Fernando Alonso, and knocked out in Q1, guys, Alexander Albon, Zhou Guanyu, the 7-times world champion Lewis Hamilton in his final race for Mercedes, Franco Colapinto, and on his debut in the Alpine, Jack Doohan in last. And yeah, just like I said, thumbs up with Lewis. What the issues have been this season. Just not good enough in qualifying. Repeated poor pace. Being knocked out in Q2 and Q1 too many times. It's been nowhere near good enough from Hamilton, and he knows that in 2024. And we hope that when he joins Ferrari next year, he'll get back to his best. But Q2 will be underway in probably 2 to 3 minutes from now. And I'll get everything ready for that in a moment. Obviously, it'll be a 15-minute long session. But let's see what you guys are having to say. Cruz is saying Hammy will qualify 16th in the Ferrari next year. Craig asking what happened to Jack. No idea. But yeah, that wasn't a good final lap from Doohan. Given how well Gasly did on the final lap, Doohan should have got himself into Q2 there, but he failed to do so. And Cruiser also earlier saying Hammy should retire after the race. I mean, I think with Lewis, I'm not prepared yet to say he's absolutely done. But maybe in a couple years, we'll look back at this season as the first season where he was past his best, like clearly past his best. But we'll have to wait, till next year and the year after to see, what more Lewis Hamilton has left for us. But I don't think that bollard is the reason he didn't get into Q2, because he only had 2 more corners to deal with, and and one of them's flat out. So, yeah, I don't think Hamilton was cost by the bollard, really. He just wasn't quick enough. And, yeah, had a bit of traffic ahead of him, which maybe distracted him, added some dirty air, but the lap just wasn't good enough. That's a showing on Sky F1. On the SkyPad analysis, a replay of what happened. But let me get this other. There you go. The other cut-off zone. And yeah, whoever ends up between the 2 dotted lines at the end of Q2 will be out in those positions. And Racing Bulls and Aston Martin, I think, are likely to have their cars eliminated in this part of qualifying. And then maybe Bottas or Gasly. I still think Haas will get both cars into Q3. But should be interesting, this part of the session, nonetheless. Yeah, Q2 underway in a couple minutes. Woden says, yeah, if you had the bollard for a full lap, it would cost a lot of time, but 2 corners, not so much. Yeah. He was already not that quick in the first couple sectors. So, and again, there's only one real corner he would have had to slow down for after he picked up the bollard. And I don't think he lost all that lap time in one corner. So, yeah, nowhere near good enough from Hamilton. And even if you were to blame the bollard, he still should have been quick enough with what he had done before he got to that part of the track, so that he, wouldn't have got eliminated anyway. So, yeah, not good enough. But like I said, Hamilton knows that what he has done this season in qualifying has not been good enough. As they're showing further replays of Perez and his exceeding track limits incident, but the stewards reinstated it. They've got the data to show that he stayed within the white line, barely. And that's a replay they're showing on the TV broadcast on board. Liam Lawson, when he came across all those cars at the final corner, he dealt with it so well. Pure instinct, and did the right thing. Just dove for the inside of the corner, which is obviously what you have to do anyway at that final corner. And he ended up not really losing any time because of it. Any major time, anyway. As Lewis Hamilton trudges his way depressingly to the FIA weighbridge. As Q2 begins in 30 seconds or 25 seconds now. And yeah, we'll see in this session what midfield teams fall foul of the cutoff zone. But I think in this session, the best time we saw in Q1 was a 23.3. From the front runners, we should see a late 122 in this session. Like a 22.9, maybe a 22.8, but I think a 22.9 is definitely up for grabs. So I'm very interested to see if anyone does get into the 122s, who it is. Because Ferrari obviously looked quick in Q1, but I'm not necessarily sure it's because they were, or that they are, actually that quick. Because McLaren obviously didn't show any pace. McLaren were actually slower, I think, in that session, Q1, than they were in practice yesterday. So McLaren definitely sandbagging in that session, which they do tend to do, McLaren. They do tend to be not very quick in Q1 and then show their real pace in Q2 and Q3. As out comes Max Verstappen, who has won here in Abu Dhabi the last 4 occasions, and of course is the world champion. And with 14 minutes to go now in Q2, let's see if he can put or lay down a marker for later in Q3. If he can do a 122.9 right here, then that absolutely sends a message to McLaren of, I'm here to fight for pole yet again. And don't think you're going to have it easy. But we'll see what Max can do. Red Bull have had their issues this weekend, as has been documented. As we're now looking at the Aston Martin garage, as Aston Martin look like they're about to release a car onto the track. Obviously, both Aston Martins into Q2, which is good to see. Because I was pretty sure that that at least one of their cars was going to get eliminated, given how slow they've looked this weekend, as now pretty much all the cars left in this session are coming out of their garage into the pit lane. As Russell and Lawson incident at turn 14, the final corner in Q1, impeding, noted. That will be Russell impeding Lawson. It's been noted, but I think Russell will get away with that because I don't think Lawson really ended up being impeded that much. And yeah, no further investigation, the FIA stewards have just announced. Yeah, Max Verstappen, let's see what you have for us and whether Red Bull do have pole position pace or whether it's only maybe good enough for third, fourth, fifth on the grid today. Goes through turn 1, now through turn 2, 3, and obviously 4, and into the hairpin of turn 5. The first sector complete, 17 seconds. That's a decent first sector. Obviously, the first sector is largely irrelevant because it's obviously largely just flat out and you're just relying on the car at that point. As he's completed the first DRS zone, now through the turn 7 and 8 chicane. And car looks pretty good through there. Now opens DRS again as he's about to complete the middle sector time beam. And middle sector looking good. But it's all about, as I've said before, all about at this track, the final sector. And you would expect Red Bull to have a good car through the final sector, but it didn't look like that yesterday. But let's see what it looks like now. There's Max now through the final couple corners. Hits the apex nicely of the final corner. And Verstappen does do a 122.9. Barely gets himself into the 122s. It's a 122.998. But there you go. There is a message sent to the others that, yeah, Red Bull, they've improved a lot and they have got the pace today to fight. Unless, of course, McLaren come out and absolutely smash that lap time, which is very possible. But until then, we will see. As George Russell on his lap so far, 5.5 tenths off the pace of Verstappen after the first 2 sectors. So Mercedes absolutely nowhere near, but this is probably because I would imagine, at least hope, that Russell is on a scrubbed set of tyres. As he comes into the final corner now. And if he is on a scrub set, then a mid 123 would be a good lap time. And no, he does a 123.8. But yeah, I would really hope he's on an old set of tyres there, because that's an awful lap time if he isn't. Kevin Magnussen goes third. Obviously, we know Ferrari will be on an old set of tyres because they always are for the first run of Q2. Hulkenberg goes up to second. Here comes Leclerc. And yeah, 23.8. So almost matching Russell there. As Sainz does a 23.5, which is a pretty good lap time on old tyres. So Ferrari's pace is decent, not necessarily pole position worthy, as Lando Norris, purple first and final sector, but only goes second, 1/10 exactly slower than Max Verstappen. Very interesting. And it appeared to me that McLaren were on a fresh set of tyres, as that's a replay of Leclerc having a massive snap of oversteer at turn 13, I think it is, or turn 12. It's where Latifi crashed in 2021. You guys know what corner I'm on about. Yeah. Liam Lawson has now gone up to 6th place, splitting Russell and Leclerc. Alonso now up to 8th. Lance Stroll is in 9th. With Magnussen 10th. Then the drop zone, Bottas, Gasly, Perez, Piastri, Tsunoda. None of those drivers have actually set a lap time. Oscar Piastri, though, has done a purple first sector. Yuki Tsunoda goes up to third. Very, very good lap from Tsunoda. A 1:23.4. That's a very good lap time for Tsunoda. As Perez only goes 8th. As Oscar Piastri round the final corner goes third on a 1:23.199. So it is Verstappen, Norris, and Piastri are top 3. And maybe it will end up that way at the end of qualifying. But yeah, we have got all the lap times now on the board in Q2, and with 7 minutes to go, it is Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Yuki Tsunoda, Carlos Sainz, Nico Hulkenberg, George Russell, Liam Lawson, Sergio Perez, and Charles Leclerc, who are on their way to Q3. And then Alonso, Stroll, Magnussen, Bottas, and Gasly, in that order, are on their way into being eliminated. Kevin Magnussen, I really hope, has got more pace in the bag, because that lap time Magnussen has done is very poor. Over half a second slower than his teammate. So Magnussen definitely has got a lot more time to find. As Aston Martin, I think, would be decently happy with where they are at the moment, 11th and 12th, given how poor they looked in practice. But in regards to the fight for pole, again, maybe McLaren have still got more pace to show, but that lap time from Max, a 1:22.9, that really has laid down a marker for Q3. Because as I said, if anyone could get into the 1:22s, you would be looking good for contention for pole position, and that's what Max has done. And we didn't necessarily expect that. McLaren still look very quick, but I think McLaren could maybe go quicker. But I am also interested to see how Ferrari get on, because Carlos Sainz's lap time of a 1:23.5 on what I believe was a scrub set of tyres. If it was a scrub set of tyres, that is a very good lap time, because on a fresh set, he probably could get right in there with Max and Lando. So watch out for Carlos Sainz as well. He might pop himself in there. As he says on the radio, Perez was in his way at turn 12, or when he was doing his flying lap. As Max Verstappen, helmet off, and clearly done for Q2. And yeah, there's no way he's going to get eliminated. He's almost a second clear of Alonso, who's in 11th, and there's no way that Alonso or the cars behind are going to do a 1:22. As out comes everybody else out of the pit lane. As all couple of the two racing bulls there trying to barge their way in and having to stop and wait. As it getting a bit close there in the pit lane, but just about okay. Did Hamilton's time get deleted? No, he just did a poor lap time. As we're now looking at Leclerc towards the back of the pack coming out of the pit lane. Also, great job by Tsunoda so far. 23.4 the lap time he's done. And pretty confident that Tsunoda should be able to make it into Q3. But can his teammate Liam Lawson, who's currently in 8th, going to be close? Obviously, you would expect Perez and Leclerc behind him to improve. Leclerc definitely will go quicker than him. Perez you never know, but theoretically he should, given how quick the Red Bull is. So, yeah, it's going to be close for Lawson. But Tsunoda, I think, his teammate, I think, already has probably done a good enough job to be into Q3. Obviously, is back out there to make sure of that. As Leclerc saying, yeah, the AlphaTauri there was over the limit. Obviously, not calling it by his correct name, but that's how most of the drivers know that team anyway. As here is Kevin Magnussen, who we know can do a lot better with what could be the final qualifying lap of his career. What a qualifier this guy has been. Let's hope this isn't his final lap. Isn't, sorry, his final lap. My throat cut out there. And he's done a good first sector. And definitely, if he can reach the potential of what is, what you're able to do in that car, really should be able to get into Q3, because Hülkenberg is up in 6th and only half a second away from Verstappen. As Magnus said, looking good through the chicane. Now DRS open up to the middle sector point. And half a tenth off Leclerc after the first 2 sectors, who's in 10th. Gonna have to be a mighty final sector, but we know Kevin Magnussen is capable of it. Through turn 13, 14, and now the final couple corners is George Russell has not improved his first sector. Pierre Gasly's on a very good lap. He's 2 tenths up on Leclerc in 15th. Kevin Magnussen is eliminated. He only goes 11th. Not good enough from the Dane, and that sums up why this is going to be his final race weekend in Formula 1. His teammate Hülkenberg goes 2nd on a 1:23.0. What a lap time from Hülkenberg, and what pace from the Haas. Here comes Pierre Gasly, who goes 3rd on a 1:23.0 as well. Stunning pace from Hülkenberg and Gasly, who've been the 2 top midfield performers recently. Russell only goes 6th. Perez goes 7th. As Leclerc is now in the drop zone, but obviously is out there improving. Alonso and Stroll also improving. As Valtteri Bottas has got to complete his outlap, because he's about to, and there you go, he does it just about with 5 seconds to go, as Leclerc is doing a good enough lap at the minute. Lance Stroll goes 10th, but I don't think that'll be enough as the checkered flag has fallen. These are your final laps of Q2. Fernando Alonso, can he get into the top 10? Yes, he can. What a lap from Alonso. 6th he goes. That's a stunning lap from Fernando, proving why he still is one of the top drivers out there. And here comes Leclerc, who goes quickest. What an improvement by Leclerc, a 1:22.9. As Carlos Sainz, I hope for his sake, is out there doing a lap, and he is, and he goes 2nd on a 1:22.9. Ferrari have got very good pace. As Tsunoda improves but stays. Oh no, Leclerc has had his time deleted and he's out. Leclerc is out in 13th. And that means Leclerc will start tomorrow's race from last on the grid. And that pushes Tsunoda for the moment back in the top 10. But Valtteri Bottas now comes through the final corner. Can he do anything about Tsunoda? Yes, he can. He goes 9th. What an effort from the Finn. And he pushes Yuki Tsunoda into the drop zone. But Leclerc, what a disaster. 14th only. And he will start at the back of the grid with his 10th-place penalty. What a second part of qualifying. Quite incredible. And Leclerc says, no freaking way for that turn 1. And they say, yep, turn 1. Maybe he'll be reinstated. We'll have to see. Here's a replay of what he did at turn 1. And it, looked like he went just over, but it was close. Is a replay. And I mean, it looks as close as the Sergio Perez one, but maybe they'll reinstate it, who knows. But for the minute, he is out in Q2. So Q2, guys, is over and done with. Let's go through your drivers on their way to Q3. Carlos Sainz, Max Verstappen, Nico Hülkenberg, Pierre Gasly, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Fernando Alonso. What an effort from him. George Russell, Valtteri Bottas, also super effort from him. Sergio Perez, and knocked out in Q2, Yuki Tsunoda, Lance Stroll, Liam Lawson, Charles Leclerc, and Kevin Magnussen. And just the final part of qualifying to come. And I will say that maybe I did exaggerate Ferrari's pace at the end there, because, you know, compared to Max and the Red Bull and the 2 McLarens, they didn't do a final lap. So, I mean, Ferrari are not as far off the pace as I thought they were, but I think still Max versus the 2 McLarens is most likely what we've got here for the fight for pole position. But Sainz is still in there to the point where if a mistake is made, he can take advantage. And thankfully for Ferrari, Max is in the fight to take more points possibly away from McLaren, even though Leclerc will be starting at the very back for Ferrari, which is obviously a disaster for them in trying to win the, Constructors' Championship. But you never know what could happen in Formula 1. Stranger things have happened. The championship is still possible for Ferrari. But most likely it is heading the way of McLaren still. Leclerc, I mean, if Leclerc could have qualified 3rd or 4th today, like I said, that would have ended up being like a 14th or a 13th on the grid, which would have been obviously a bit better than last on the grid. And if McLaren had not got pole position, then that would have been something for Ferrari there. But yeah, just a disaster for Leclerc. And if I'm Ferrari, I would, if there is any setup issues, I'd be tempted to start Leclerc from the pit lane to make sure that car is optimized for the race. But yeah, for this, fight for pole position, it should be, like I said, between Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, and Oscar Piastri. That's who it should be between. But let's find out on the first run if Carlos Sainz can do any better than what he did at the end of Q2 there. Because if he can, go and do like a 1:22.6 or something like that with his first Q3 run, then it puts him right in that fight. But if he can't, then it shows that, Ferrari just don't quite have enough pace, unfortunately. As on the SkyPad, Anthony Davidson is just showing replays of some of the drivers at the end there, why they got knocked out. And make sure, guys, to keep voting in the chat, because it's very close, the vote between a couple drivers. Let me know who you think is going to take pole position for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Will it be Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, or Max Verstappen? I'm going to stick with Lando Norris because that's who I predicted. I'm going to stick by that prediction. But it's going to be close between Norris and Verstappen. And Piastri as well. We have to remember him. He's, within a tenth of his teammate, really. So he's in an ideal spot, Oscar, if there is any slip-ups. But, yeah, we will find out. Herman says Gasly pole. What a lap from Gasly to get. He went from 15th up to 3rd, ended up 4th. Hulkenberg as well. What a lap time he did. Both Hulkenberg and Gasly did a 23.0. If they can do any better than that on lap time in Q3, then they could be quite high up on the grid. Because Russell is not looking very quick in the Mercedes. And then, Alonso and Bottas, they should be quicker than. And maybe they'll end up quicker than Perez. So, Nico Hulkenberg, for example, could end up 5th in qualifying here. It could happen. Which would be massive for Haas. Also, this has been a massive session for Alpine, who, to keep Haas at bay, they need to obviously keep themselves close to Haas. As Q3, by the way, has begun. First car on track is Nico Hulkenberg. So yeah, Alpine having a good session as well with Pierre Gasly, who's been their main man for the last few races. But there you go. We have 11 minutes remaining in the final qualifying session of the year. A lot at stake. And the drivers must deliver, especially for teams like McLaren, Ferrari, Haas, and Alpine. But I think what I'll do is I'll finish up the poll in the chat because I think we've had enough votes. And there is just about a winner. So I asked you guys, who will take pole position for the 2024 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix? 183 votes. And 36% of you went for Lando Norris. 33% for Max Verstappen, so it was close. 18% for Oscar Piastri. And then 11% for George Russell. Like I said, I am going to stick by Lando, who was my prediction for pole. And we'll see what happens. But let's see what Hulkenberg can do. Can he get himself into the 122s? If he can, then boy oh boy, Haas in for a strong result today. As Hulkenberg completes the first sector. Not the greatest hairpin corner there. Bit of, a couple snaps. But he was all right, as George Russell behind him has gone about 1/10 of a second quicker in the first sector. It's all understeer through the first part of the chicane for Hulkenberg. That would have cost him 1/10 or so. So not great through there. And Hulkenberg, yeah, this is not quite his best lap on board by the looks of it. As Max Verstappen does a purple first sector in his attempt to take 5 poles in a row, it would be at this track. What a incredible record that would be. As Hulkenberg through the final couple corners. And Nico Hulkenberg, yeah, does a 1:23.4, which is nearly half a second slower than he went in Q2. So I'm definitely, yeah, he can do better than that. As George Russell, only a 23.6, and he goes slower than Hulkenberg. Awful pace by Mercedes. They just have not been quick today. Nowhere near as quick as I was expecting. Sergio Perez goes ahead of Russell in seconds. Hulkenberg on for a net 8th. As Max Verstappen has a massive tank slapper out the final corner and nearly puts it in the pit wall, but still goes quickest on a 1:22.9. Well, that was a big mistake from Max as Sainz goes second. 23.3, slower than what he did in Q2 by 0.4 of a second. So Sainz can definitely do better than that. But here come the McLarens. This is their chance. As Lando Norris not on a good lap so far. 0.3 down on Max after the first two sectors as Alonso goes up to fourth. This is a good chance for Piastri to take advantage. And here he comes to the line. And no, he goes second. How has Piastri not gone quickest despite Max's mistake? 0.4 of a second slower. And Lando Norris goes second and 0.4 of a second slower than Max Verstappen. So somehow, despite a gigantic tank slapper out the final corner, as Piastri's had his time deleted, so he's back down to 9th. Despite a gigantic tank slapper from Verstappen out the final corner, he is still somehow on provisional pole position. But nobody, as of yet, I think, has done a lap time that is really the best they could do. Everyone in that first run of Q3, I think, ended up going slower than they did in Q2. So there is improvement to be found by everyone. So we are definitely not done here yet. As, Oscar Piastri, track limit violation at turn 1, and that's why he is now down in 9th. So it's currently Verstappen on provisional pole by 0.4 of a second. Norris second. Sainz third. Hülkenberg still in 4th, even though that lap time he did so far in Q3 is slower than what he did in Q2. So Hülkenberg could do even better. Gasly 5th, Alonso 6th, Perez 7th, Russell 8th, and then Piastri 9th. Lap time deleted. Valtteri Bottas 10th. Bottas is only going to do one run, I believe, at the end of qualifying. So we'll see where Bottas ends up. But this is going to be some end to qualifying between, you'd think, Max and the two McLarens, but Sainz still in there as well in the Ferrari. And who knows what Hülkenberg, Gasly, Alonso, and Bottas will do, what surprises they will spring up in this final lap of qualifying. So yeah, don't go anywhere, guys, because we are going to have quite possibly a classic end to this qualifying session. And I hope we do get it, because we've had some classic qualifying sessions in 2024, and it would be a great way to bow out as some of the drivers are about to get back out there, such as Gasly in the Alpine, who looks like he will get back out there very shortly. Here's a replay of Piastri's track limit violation. Again, it looked as close as the Perez one. But if he... Oh, there you go. Piastri's time has been reinstated. So Oscar is back up to 3rd place. And remember, Oscar is only 0.040 of a second away from pole. So he can absolutely get pole position. Can Oscar? As the cars now slowly trundling out the pit lane through the tunnel for their final qualifying laps of the year. And McLaren wouldn't, it wouldn't be the end of the world if they ended up 2nd and 3rd, but really, pole position, it's right there for them. They need to get it if they can. As Oscar Piastri seeking his first pole position in F1. Amazing to think he's never had pole, given how good he's been this year. Not at every Grand Prix, but at, some. But yeah, he has not yet taken the magical pole position. As Sergio Perez is now on his final qualifying lap, and he's already completed the first sector, half a tenth down on Verstappen. Perez needs to try and get in the top 5 on the grid, really, but we know with Perez that isn't necessarily likely. But that's what he needs to do if he can do it. If he qualifies 5th, that would be a good result for Perez. As he is about 3 tenths off Max after the first 2 sectors. And Perez through the final few corners. Now, remember, of course, there's going to be lots of improvements in this final couple minutes because everyone did not do as good of a lap time as they could have done in the first run here in Q3. So, going to be lots of improvements on this final run as Sergio Perez comes to the line and goes 4th on a 1:23.2. We'll see if he stays there. Probably not. But we'll see. As here comes Oscar Piastri. Can he take pole for the first time in his career? He stays very cleanly within track limits through turn 1. And the first sector is not an improvement, but it's only 5 thousandths of a second slower than Verstappen. So, no problem. Just needs to make sure he builds his confidence going through the lap until that final sector where he needs to give it everything. As into the chicane of turn 7. Wasn't the absolute cleanest chicane from him, but good enough as Valtteri Bottas goes up to 4th. What a lap. Of course, on fresher tyres compared to everybody else. We'll see where he'll end up. But ahead of Perez on the grid, as Hülkenberg goes quickest at 1:22.8. As Oscar Piastri has not really done enough on this lap so far to put him on pole. But let's see what he does in the final sector as Gasly goes up to 4th. Piastri through the final corner. And he does go on to provisional pole by 0.08 of a second. But Lando Norris behind is a 1/10.5 quicker than Piastri after the first 2 sectors. So Lando looking like he's going to go quicker than his teammate. Russell has not improved his first sector. Carlos Sainz is improving as Alonso goes 7th. Actually, no, 6th ahead of Bottas as Carlos Sainz goes 2nd, only a couple hundredths away from pole as the checkered flag now flies as Lando Norris onto provisional pole, 2 tenths ahead of Piastri. What can Max Verstappen do about that? Max has not improved either of his 2 sectors as George Russell only goes 7th. Awful for Mercedes. What can Verstappen do in the final sector to try and get pole? No, he doesn't improve and he ends up 5th on the grid. So McLaren, in the end, lock out the front row. Lando Norris on pole with a 1:22.5. I told you it'd be a 1:22, a mid 1:22 for pole. And that's what it was. Lando Norris on pole. Oscar Piastri 2nd. Carlos Sainz 3rd. Nico Hülkenberg 4th on the grid. Max Verstappen only 5th. And then Pierre Gasly 6th. Russell 7th. Alonso 8th. Bottas 9th. Perez 10th. What an effort from Bottas as well. And the rest of the field in qualifying, the last qualifying of the year. Tsunoda 11th. Stroll 12th. Lawson 13th. Leclerc 14th. Magnussen 15th. Albon 16th. Joe 17th. Hamilton 18th. Colapinto 19th. And Jack Doohan last of all. What a session. What a session that was. And yeah, let's get into driver of the day. And there's only one clear winner, surely, in this vote. Who is your driver of the day for qualifying in Abu Dhabi? And your options for driver of the day are Lando Norris, Nico Hülkenberg, who for me is driver of the day. What a lap that was. Pierre Gasly, I'll put him in there. And then Valtteri Bottas as well for qualifying 9th in what is going to be his final Formula One Grand Prix. But there you go. There is the poll. And yeah, for me, Nico Hülkenberg, driver of the day, within not even just within half a second, he was within 0.3 of pole in a Haas. Just, I can't even explain how special of a lap that was from Hülkenberg. And he will line up on the second row of the grid for tomorrow's race. And if Haas obviously were to finish in 4th, that would be 12 points. But Alpine obviously have got Gasly in 6th. So Alpine would still finish ahead in the championship as it stands if it does finish the race, in the way qualifying is. So Haas obviously tomorrow going to do the best they can, but just hope Alpine drop off somehow. As every vote so far has been for Hülkenberg, and zero surprise about that. Fully deserves it. And still showing that despite Hülkenberg having debuted all the way back, 14 years ago, and Hülkenberg is in his late 30s, 37, still, I think you'd have to say Hülkenberg probably at his best at the minute. When Sergio Perez, who's 34, is, done. It just shows you how impressive what Hülkenberg is doing, given that, especially for a driver of his quality, who, he's not an elite level driver, so when he does eventually drop off, and when he is when that time comes where he is past his prime, that drop off will be clear. And normally, if you look at, say, more of the midfield drivers, they do tend to drop off in terms of their performance not being good enough for Formula One anymore. They do tend to drop off, I'd probably say, quicker than the elite level do. But for Hülkenberg, 14 years at this level. I mean, I know he's not been on the grid every season. Obviously, 2022, 2021, 2020, he wasn't a full-time driver. But despite that little break, has come back and is still pretty much at his best, and I would actually say better now than he was in probably the last year or so when he was at Renault. I'm just so impressed by the guy, and he fully deserves to be on the grid still. And if he keeps this up, then he should be on the grid for many years to come. And eventually, maybe that podium will come. As Astra says, respect Hulk, Bottas, Gasly, contempt Perez. And even, with Hülkenberg, obviously I've had my criticisms of the guy in terms of his career. And I do think still, at their peak, Sergio Perez was the better driver. But right now, there is no debate. Hülkenberg is easily better than Sergio Perez right now. And like I said, as long as Hülkenberg keeps this level up, he'll be on the grid for many years to come, because he is a very useful driver, especially given as well how experienced the guy is. But I think we'll finish the poll already. There have been a ton of votes, but it's pretty clear who's won the poll. Who was your driver of the day for qualifying? 13 votes and 76% of you went for Nico Hülkenberg, 15% for Lando Norris, 7% for Pierre Gasly, and then nobody for Valtteri Bottas. But guys, that is it for this qualifying watch along. Thank you guys for coming along, and obviously this is the final qualifying watch along of the year. Been, qualifying watch alongs this year have been great. We've had so many exciting sessions, and a lot of the sessions in qualifying have been actually better than the races. So yeah, I've really enjoyed qualifying in 2024, and let's hope it's just as, if not more exciting in 2025. Remember, tomorrow I will be live 2 hours before the start at 11 a.m. UK time for the final Grand Prix of the season. Niblo, my co-commentator, will join for that as well. Remember as well, I do have a recorded video which I finished last night and will be uploading in a couple hours about the Max Verstappen and George Russell war of words off the track. That video, like I said, will be coming out in a couple hours. All I've got to do is make a thumbnail for it and then do the title and description. And once that's done, I'll get it uploaded onto the channel, so make sure to check that out when you can. And offer your thoughts as to what you thought of what Max said, what George said, and who was right, who was wrong, or whatever. So yeah, that's what's coming up on the channel later today and tomorrow. Thank you guys massively for today. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. Smash the like button before you go. Obviously, hitting the like button does help the channel quite a bit and helps, again, show me that you guys enjoy this type of content, the watch-alongs. And make sure as well to join our Discord server, link in the description and probably in the chat. A great place that is to keep up to date with the community and when I go live, when I upload videos and any content updates or channel updates that I make or may make in the future. But guys, that's been it for the final qualifying watch along of the season, and until the final race watch along tomorrow and until that video later today, it has been me, Kazza HD. Goodbye.